In this video, we will explain the three propositions that demonstrate the increase of public relations professionals beyond reporters. This is the first one. As professional journalism atrophies, public relations practitioners are growing bolder and more sophisticated. Public relations as an occupation came into its own only in the 20th century. Since then, the newspaper, then the radio, the television, the hundreds of cable and satellite channels, and finally the internet have made media as common as air. Because news conveys the power to define the reality upon which people act, corporate and government officials began to deploy policies to bend media accounts to their own purposes. There are hundreds of different political and social deceptions created in that way, and we will mention three of the most famous ones. Well, the first one, by 2017, only a day after the President Trump's inauguration, his press secretary told reporters that was the largest audience to witness an inauguration, but aerial photographs showed the claim to be illogical. As a result, Trump was given a liar rating. Another example is the administration of Dick Cheney and George W. Bush. It was unusually successful at manipulating a compliant news media during its first term. To spread its message, the government secretly paid journalists to shield for its policies. That was the way to create and distribute fake news. As the last example, a similarly self-serving effort at muddying public opinion about the health risks of smoking was executed by the tobacco industry during the last half of the 20th century.
2. We can predict when deception is most likely, thus know when to raise our level of skepticism. Usually, when we have the advantage of something or we want to avoid damage to others, we tend to say or hide the truth. Also, if our deception has very little chance of being discovered, it will encourage us. Have we ever stopped to think about the consequences that lying could have? Always the costs and benefits of deception are calculated by the liar. For example, the United States military led the press to believe that Kuwait would be invaded by the sea, but the real invasion came from the desert. That strategy was the key to winning against the Iraqis. When the deception became obvious after invasion, there was little cost. In conclusion, we can say that the press was very important in the war because it will be used to gain strategic advantage. The likelihood that a deception will be discovered varies with the number of people who are aware of it. The less who know about the falsehood and the more they like it, more possibilities to disclose it by accident. These conditions for successful deception are most used by military forces such as the CIA or FBI. Companies or corporations cannot disclose what is manipulated. They can fire the liar or even jeopardize the career of the writer considering it disloyal. Even so, when it comes to one corporate deception, it's more difficult to uncover. For example, the case of Wall Street. The large Wall Street investment companies that joined a large part of the world in the recession in 2007 were not foreseen by the elite business press. We can say that nowadays, with social networks, lies are very easy to spread, and that lies can cause damage before the truth comes out.
3. The publicist's technique of choice is framing information to lead audiences in a particular direction without their noticing. Outright lies are more likely to be exposed than half-truths, and once exposed, they can lead mainstream journalists to become more skeptical of the source. For instance, imagine that a journalist usually gets information about politics from a particular politician, and suddenly the journalist finds out that the politician lied to another journalist. The journalist will almost certainly find another source of information, maybe another politician, because it is likely that the politician will tell lies again. Journalists have a technique in order to subtly lead the audience in a particular direction. This technique is called framing information. Frames exclude significant parts of the story, but it's hard to notice information that is missing. Framing is basically using more sophisticated words to hide the truth. According to the article we've read, there are 5 common framing types. 1. Priming. Journalists often use the power that our brains have to link information to images. For example, imagine that there are 2 election campaigns, A and B. In A's leaflet, it says, "We are going to increase penalties." In B's leaflet, it says, "We are going to increase punishment for carjacking, home invasion robbery, etc." B's election campaign has provoked emotions without you noticing. I mean, you can't imagine increased penalties because it has a wide meaning, but as carjacking and home invasion robbery are more specific, your brain automatically creates an image for those, so it's more likely for you to vote for B rather than for A. 2. Framing with value-laden words and phrases. This is basically using fancy words. For instance, using the word progressive to refer to liberals. It seems like the rest aren't progressive, that only liberals have progressist ideas. So, this is a plus for the liberals. 3. Framing by naming. For example, when the administration of Bush was about to invade Iraq, they named the invasion as Operation Iraqi Freedom. Naming the invasion with those words fooled the citizens. I mean, they didn't know it was an invasion until the operation was carried out. The administration also used the word terrorists to refer to Iraqi resistance fighters, in order to trick people. 4. Framing with stereotypes. It is used to frame people, places, and events. They can be positive, for example, Asians are good at maths, or negative, for example, men are insensitive and combative. 5. Framing with themes. It is often used in stories. For example, this is how a group of reporters framed the story of a man who had fractured his wife's skull before being shot and killed by the police. This is the story of Dan McGovern, whose friends and family said loved cards, cops, guns, and most of all, the woman he met after paying $3,000 to a professional matchmaking service. As you can see, the reporters didn't mention domestic violence, they hid it. 6. Framing with similes and metaphors. By doing this, journalists can transform complex and not well understood information to something simple and familiar. This technique is often used by opinion writers, but it is more and more used by journalists so as to soften the impact of the harsh message they want to transmit. However, it must be highlighted that good journalists help the audience see through similes and metaphors instead of fooling them. So from now on, be careful because most of the journalists are fooling us.